Tes, a lot to do. So we are picking up Samech Tes 69a, Amr Reb Yitzchak, Shamati. So it's 6 lines down from the top. Amr Reb Yitzchak, Shamati Shtayim. So Yitzchak says, I heard 2 halachas. So the Gemara says, Achas Kamitza Zar, Achas Malikas Zar. So I learned 2 halachas. One was about Kamitza, done by a non-Kohen. One was about Malika, done by a non-Kohen. And both in both of these cases, the act was done. And what happened? The halacha is Echa Tereit, Ve'echa Lo Tereit. So the halacha by one of them is that if you offered it up on the Mizbeach, you have to take it down. But the other one, you don't have to take it down. And what happened? V'lo Yidana. But Rabbi Yitzchak says, I don't remember which is which. So I know, mostly this happens all the time, right? I know I learned 2 halachas. One is that both regard an avoda done by a non-Kohen, one kamitza, one malika. One, the halacha is neither you should offer up. But one of them, if you did offer up, you don't have to take it down from the mizbech. And the other one, if you did offer up, you do have to take it down from the mizbech. And I can't remember which one is which. Amr Chizkiah, so Chizkiah says, I think I know this one. Mistabra, kamitza terid, malika lo terid. It would appear that the halacha is Ravosai, that kamitza offered up by a non-Kohen, by a zar, even if put on the mizbeach, has to be taken off the mizbeach. Malika lo tered. But halacha l'maaseh, if the Kohen, if a zar did malika and put it on the mizbeach, it need not be taken off the mizbeach. Samaishna malika. So we'll say, why is malika different? That if done by a zar, you don't have to take it off the mizbeach. To which the Gemara answers, the yeshna bebama. We'll say ultimately again because there's a concept of malika by a bama. So because again by a bama, Rabbi will say the halacha is anyone could offer that karban, even a zar. Therefore what? Therefore halacha lemaisa. Even if done by a zar in the Beis Hamikdash, although you're not supposed to offer it, if you do offer it, you need not take it down from the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, kamitza nami yeshna b'bama. But I don't understand using that logic. We'll say kamitza also applies by a bama. In other words, we'll say any form of sacrificial service that you find in the Beis Hamikdash was also done by a bama. It was also done by a bama. So therefore, if you're going to tell me that kamitza, that malika, if a zar does malika and offers it up on the mizbeach, you shouldn't do it ideally, but if you put it on the mizbeach, you don't have to take it off because there's a concept of malika by bama, which means that you already find the concept of a Yisrael, of a zar doing malika. I can make the same argument by kamitza. Let's say you could also offer up a karban mincha on a bama. Who's offering up the karban mincha on a bama? None other than a zar. So therefore, again, I should say the halacha is that if a zar offers up a kamitza in the Beis Hamikdash, it also lote, you don't take it off the mizbeach. To which the Gemara says, "V'chitema ein mincha b'bama." Well, maybe you'll say, you know what? Maybe not. Or we'll say maybe the halacha is by bamos that you could do animal karbanos, but maybe we don't do menachos. Maybe the halacha is that you don't do a karban mincha ultimately by a bama. The Gemara says, "Ein ofos nami b'bama." So the Gemara says, "Ein ofos nami b'bama." So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, then l'maaseh, again, if you're not doing a mincha on the bama, then the halacha would be that we would not offer bird offerings on the bama as well. But we'll say, what's the connection between menachos and ofos? The Amar Rav Sheshes, because Rav Sheshes said as follows: L'divrei ha'omer yesh mincha b'bama, yesh ofos b'bama. Rav Sheshes says, we'll say, according to the opinion who says, now we'll say, this is actually very interesting, because this is a machlokes now, not in the Beis Hamikdash, but rather this is a machlokes about the, we'll call it sacrificial scope of a bama. Everyone agrees that we'll call it animal offerings can be offered up on the bama. The shaila we're going to see is what about other types of offering? So Rav Shesha says, according to the opinion who says that you could offer up a mincha on a bama, yesh ofos bebama. You could also go ahead and do bird offerings on a bama. The divrei ha'omer ein mincha. According to the opinion who says that there is no karban mincha on a bama, then what's the halacha? Ein ofos. There are no bird offerings on a bama. So we'll say, so what's the pshat? So it seems to be if you hold there's a mincha on a bama, then there are ofos on a bama. If you hold there's no mincha on a bama, then no ofos on a bama. What's the connection between minachos and ofos? My taima, the Gemara says, we'll say, because the pasuk says, it's actually very interesting. This is the pasuk I will say by Har Sinai. So the pasuk says, Vayishlach es na'arei b'nei Yisrael, vayalu olos, Vayizbechu Zevachim Shlomim LaHashem Parim. So we'll say, so the pasuk says that ultimately again Moshe, this is by Har Sinai, by the Mizbechos, the Bamos, that they set up at the base of Har Sinai. The Torah says that they went ahead and they offered up Zevachim. So the Gemara darshans, Zevachim velo menachos, Zevachim velo ofos. We'll say, what do we dash in from there? Then what can you offer up on a bama? Zevachim. We'll say Zevachim generally refers to what? Animal karbanos. Zevachim velo menachos. You could offer up a zevach but not a mincha. Zevachim velo ofos. Zvach, right? Animal sacrifices and not birds. Ela ima. So we'll say. So the Gemara says, rather, what should he have to say? What's the? So remember again. Let's go back for just a moment. So we begin over here with Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak telling me that what? That I heard two halachas. Both of them require a zar. One is if a zar goes ahead and does malika. One is if a zar does kamitza. In both of these cases, the zar offers it up on the mizbeach. It shouldn't go on the mizbeach, but it went up on the mizbeach. And Rabbi Yitzchak said, in one of the cases, it has to be taken off the mizbeach. The other case, it doesn't have to be taken off the mizbeach. I don't know which one is which. Chizkiah comes along and says, I'm pretty sure that the halacha is that kamitza has to be taken off the mizbeach, whereas the malika, the mincha, the mincha, the bird offering, remains on the mizbeach. What's the distinction? So the Gemara suggests, because halacha lemaisa, mincha, right, kamitza, mincha was not offered up on the mizbeach, right, was not offered up on a bama, versus malika, ophos, which were offered up ultimately again on the mizbeach. To which the Gemara says, but one second, that's not necessarily true. We see there's a machlokes, ultimately again, what was offered up on bamos, and it appears that halacha lemaisa, ophos and menachos are grouped together. So everyone agrees that you could offer up animal sacrifices on the mizbeach. What's the machlokes Rabbi? Do you offer up ophos and menachos? And it appears, at least at first glance, that what? That halacha lemaisa, ophos and menachos are grouped together. If you hold ophos in, then menachos also, or menachos and ophos. If not, if no menachos, then no ophos. Ela ima ein kiddush bekli sharis mincha bebama. Excuse me, let me read that again. Ela ima ein kiddush bekli sharis bemincha bebama. Rather, what do you have to say? You have to say that korban mincha is a little bit different on a bama. In that how? In that in a korban mincha by a bama, ultimately again, was no kiddush bekli sharis. So under normal circumstances, what happens is the Kohen takes the kmitza. What does he do with the kmitza? He puts it in a klisharis, in a service utensil. That's where it's sanctified. Then afterwards, it is put on the mizbeach. Was there a korban mincha ultimately again by a bama? So the answer is yes. But halacha lemaisa, it was never put in a klisharis. It appears instead it was just put directly on the bama itself. So the Gemara therefore says, herein lies the distinction between malika and kamitza, that kamitza by bama was never put into a kli shari. So we'll say, so what does this mean? Look at Rashi for just a moment. It's the last wide line on top of Rashi. Ein kiddush kli sharis b'mincha b'bama, hilchach lo yafinon zar b'mikdash le'in kamitza, mizar b'bama. De lo dami hach kamitza, lahach kamitza de b'mikdash, hawil v'kidsha b'kli sharis if sola b'zar. So we'll say, listen to this. So the halacha is you can't learn out korban mincha of the Beis Hamikdash from korban mincha of bama, right? Why not? In other words, we'll say, remember, what are we tempted to say? What we're tempted to say is the same way that a zar could do a korban mincha by a bama, he could also do a korban mincha by the Beis Hamikdash. And I'm saying, what does it mean he could do a korban mincha by the Beis Hamikdash? Obviously, the chatchila he can't. But what it means is what? That in the event that he did do it, b'di evet, it would be kosher, and you'd be able to leave it on the mizbeach. Now the Gemara says, no, you can't compare the korban mincha of a zar by a bama to a korban mincha of a zar by the Beis Hamikdash. Why can't you make that comparison? Well, it's a very interesting fact. Why not? Because by korban mincha by the Beis Hamikdash, there's the use of a klisharis. The kamitza is put into the klisharis, into the service utensil, and then applied to the mizbeach. By the korban mincha in a bama, what's the halacha? The halacha is that the kamitza is put directly onto the mizbeach itself. That's why by a bama a zar is kosher, but yet you can't necessarily make that same application to the korban mincha performed by a zar in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, Rabbi say this accounts for Chizkiah's distinction. Therefore, Chizkiah says halacha lemaisa, if a zar did malika, so bidi evet, if the bird was placed on the mizbeach, you could leave it there. Why? What's the logic? Because a zar could do malika by a bama, and that malika is pretty much the same malika by a mizbeach. Yet again, by Kmitza, if the Zar did Kmitza, put it on the Mizbeach, it has to come down. Why? Because even though a Zar could technically do Kmitza, not technically, even though a Zar could do Kmitza by a Bama, Kmitza by a Bama looks different than Kmitza by the Beis HaMikdash, because Kmitza by a Bama doesn't have a Kli Sharis, and ultimately, again, Kmitza by the Beis HaMikdash does have a Kli Sharis. So we'll say, how do we pass in Halacha L'Maisa? This actually is a very interesting case, because again, you have a situation of a non-Kohen doing Avodah. So we'll say, listen to this. So the Rambam Paskins, this is in Hilchos, Psuli HaMokdosh and Parakim Halacha Tesvav, Of Shemalko Zar, Va'ala Lo Yered. The Halacha will say, if a non-Kohen, a Zar, did Malika on the bird, and the bird was put on the Mizbeach, you need not take it off the Mizbeach. However, Lo Yered, V'kometza Mincha, should come to Zar Va'ala, Yered. Yet, if a Zar did Kmitza, and put that Kmitza on the Mizbeach, it has to come off the Mizbeach. Ava Pisha Zepasel, V'Zepasel, we'll say, even though again, both of them are technically invalid, Zeki Lelonis Kadesh Klal, Ve'echad Azar, Ve'echad Shar Psulin. So we'll say ultimately again, even though they're both puzzle, the comments of Mincha is as if it was never Mekudesh at all. So we'll say, so you see over here that the Rambam accepts the distinction of Chizkiah. Therefore, if a non-Kohen ends up doing Malika and the bird gets placed on the Mizbeach, you need not take it down. But if a non-Kohen does Kmitza and the Kmitza is placed on the Mizbeach, ultimately the Kmitza must be removed. That is Halacha L'Maisa. Good. Weiter. Malak b'smal o balayla. So let's remember again, going back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah spoke about if the Kohen does Malika basmal with his left hand or balayla or at night. So we'll say, what's the halacha? The Malika is invalid, but the animal, the bird, does not convey tumah. So in other words, we'll say the Malika works in order to go ahead and remove the status of nevela, even though halacha l'maisa is not kosher for sacrificial purposes. So Tanrabbanan, we'll say, let's learn this. Yachol tehei malika she'ilifnim mitama begadim bebeis habliyah. So we'll say, I might have thought as follows. I might have thought that if you have an invalid malika that happens inside of the Beis HaMikdash, that it'd be mitame begadim beis habliyah, that we'll say that indeed it would convey tumah. Remember again, we'll say this is the expression for tumas nevela. The way that nevela of a bird carcass works is that halacha l'maisa, it doesn't transmit tumah through touching, but rather it only transmits tumah how? Through ingestion. Only once you swallow it, only once you eat it, does it convey tumah ultimately to the individual and to his clothing. So I might have thought that if there was an invalid malika inside the Beis HaMikdash, mitame begadin bebeis habliyah, that ultimately again it conveys tumah to the person's clothing. Talmud lomar nevela. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk says nevela. Okay, so let's analyze this. So we'll say what does this mean? So if you look, actually not yet in Rashi. Therefore, the pasuk says nevela. It is only a nevela. It is only a nevela which transmits tumah, not this bird that died through malika, albeit an invalid malika. So Moshe says, I don't understand. Hanami neveli, but a bird that dies, supposed to say, through an improper malika, isn't that nevela? In other words, that's nevela also. Ella Talmud Lomar Treifa. Therefore, you're right. The pasuk says treifa. I don't understand. Mat treifa she'in materes es ha'isr. Af kol she'in materes es ha'isr. We'll say just like a treifa. Ultimately, again, if the animal dies as a treifa, then the halacha is it does not. The death of the animal does not take away the treifa prohibition. So to any time that the death of the animal does not remove the prohibition, ultimately, again, the animal will go ahead and convey tumah. Yatsa malika shehilifnim. So we'll say this comes to exclude a case, ultimately, again, of malika done inside the Beis HaMikdash. Hoil vihi materes es ha'isr in metames habegadim bebeis habliyah. So we'll say by malika, ultimately, again, that's done inside of the Beis HaMikdash, since it removes the isr, i.e., the animal is no longer in a vela. Ein metame begadim beis habliyah. Therefore, again, I will say the ingestion of the bird will not go ahead and convey tumah. So we'll say, which ultimately, again, is another way of saying that halacha l'maisa, even an invalid malika, so we'll say, even though the malika is invalid for sacrificial purposes, it's enough to go ahead and give the animal the designation of being slaughtered. So because it's slaughtered, therefore what? Therefore, it does not convey tumas nevela. Okay, so now let's analyze this a little bit more. Hevi hamole kodshim b'chutz. So we'll say what happens if ultimately again there are karbanos brought on the outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Let's say again the molek, the one doing malika, is bringing kachim b'chutz, bringing kachim outside of the Beis Hamikdash, umolek, and he does malika outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. Good morning. So he says, umolek chulin bein mevifnim bein mevachutz, or we'll say, or he does malika on chulin, whether inside the Beis Hamikdash or outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So what's the halacha? Hoil ve'ein matirin es ha'isser mitamin begadim abeis habliya. So I'll say, interestingly enough, this is the next case. If a person does malika, right, kachim b'chutz, a person does malika on sacrificial items outside of the Beis Hamikdash, or chulin mibifnim, unconsecrated animals inside of the Beis Hamikdash. So we'll say, in this case, the malika is absolutely meaningless. So in a case where the malika is meaningless, therefore what? The animal that is now dead has the status of what? Of nevela, and therefore halacha lemaisa does in fact convey tumah. Tanya idach. We'll say another brayso. What's the other brayso? Yachol teishchitas chulun lifnim v'kadshim beime lifnim beime v'chutz metama beis avliya. So we'll say, listen to this additional brayso. I might have thought that if you shecht chulin inside the Beis Hamikdash, or kachim, or you shecht kachim beimim bifnim beimi v'chutz inside the Beis Hamikdash or outside of the Beis Hamikdash, so metame abeis habliya, that the halacha is that the animal would convey tumah as a result of being nevela. Tamulom or nevela. So the Gemara says no, it's only if it's dafka nevela, meaning that it dies without shchita or malika. So the Gemara says, I don't understand hanami nevela, but is this not a case of also nevela? Look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says hanami nevelahi miyemar delav nevelahi hoilu shchita bifnim ba'of lo shaycha. Well, so remember again, what are we talking about over here? We're talking about a case where you're shechting the bird. So we'll say there's no such thing as shchita by sacrificial olfos. If that's the case, that there's no such concept of shchita by sacrificial olfos, then what? Then the bird, ultimately should be considered an avela. To which the Gemara says, Ella Talmud Lomer Treifa. Rather, you're right, the Gemara says you have to learn out from the pasuk from the word treifa. We'll say, what does treifa mean? So the Gemara says, Mat treifa shava bifnim kibachutz. We'll say, just like ultimately, again, a treifa is the same inside the Beis Hamikdash or outside the Beis Hamikdash. We'll say, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Talmud Lomer treifa. So Rashi says, Kilomar nevela shehi ketreifa metama. It is only in a vela, which is like a treifa, which conveys tumah. What does it mean in a vela like a treifa which conveys tumah? Sheshavos bifnim kibachutz. Rashi says, Dekan vekan hi asura. We'll say, just like a treifa is prohibited inside the Beis Hamikdash and outside the Beis Hamikdash, so too the only type of nevela which conveys tumah is the type of nevela which is asur inside the Beis Hamikdash and outside, or I should say, has the same status inside the Beis Hamikdash and outside the Beis Hamikdash. Af kol shavos bifnim kibachutz. We'll say this comes to include all cases where the status is the same inside and outside. Yotza shchitas chulim bifnim. V'kadshim mein b'mifnim mein b'machutz. We'll say this comes to exclude the case of shchitas chulin inside the Beis Hamikdash or kadshim inside or outside the Beis Hamikdash. Hoil v'lo shavu b'fnim kibachutz ein matam b'gada Beis Habliyah. So we'll say, remember again, both of these cases of shchitas chulin b'fnim. We'll say, remember, shchitas chulin b'fnim is not a shaveh case. Why not? Because halacha l'maisa chulin is going to be permitted outside the Beis Hamikdash, asur inside the Beis Hamikdash. Kadshim Rabosai have different statuses inside and outside the Beis Hamikdash. Because they do not share the same status inside and outside, therefore what? They do not convey tumah ultimately as tumas nevela. So bishlama chulin lo shavu bifnim kibachutz. So I understand in the case of chulin, Rabosai, the halacha is that what? That chulin is not the same if slaughtered inside and outside the Beis Hamikdash. Ela kadshim idi v'idi psulininu. But in the case of kachim, I don't understand. If I'm doing shchita on a bird, then by definition it's possible no matter what. As we'll say, it's possible whether I'm doing it bifnim or bachutz. So the Gemara says, Amarava im ha'ilo lo shchitas chutz lechayvo kares. Because we'll say ultimately again, if shchitas chutz ultimately goes ahead and is enough to incur a penalty of kares, lo soya lo letara midei nevela, is it not enough ultimately again to go ahead and also take away the tumas nevela? Ashki chon chutz. So we'll say, now I understand that case as it applies to chutz outside the Beis Hamikdash. Pnim min yalan. How do I know that this applies ultimately inside the Beis Hamikdash as well? Hoyo v'lo shavu b'fnim ki b'chutz. Because ultimately, again, because we see that the status inside the Beis Hamikdash does not resemble the status outside. Ihachi, if that's the case, so it says the Gemara, malak kadshim b'chutz nami lo. If that's the case, then if you did malika on the bird, the sacrificial bird outside the Beis Hamikdash, it also should not be metame. Why not? Because we'll say again, the status of it does not inside the Beis Hamikdash is not the same as outside the Beis Hamikdash. Ashi donin davar shelo bechshero mi davar shelo bechshero. So we'll say Rav Sim Bar Ashi says as follows: that the halacha is if you have a case where the shchita is not matir the item, bein bifnim and bein mi bachutz, then once you see that ultimately again the item is not tamei in one location, then ultimately again it is not tamei in the second location as well. That's what it means. Danin davar shelo bechshero mi davar shelo bechshero vein danin davar shelo bechshero mi davar shebechshero. So again, if we see that a particular shchita does not matter the item, bein mi bifnim, bein mi bachutz, and either bifnim or bachutz, the item is going to be tahor, i.e., it will not convey tumah. Therefore, by definition, we apply that same tumah designation to the other location as well. So the Gemara says, "Ay v'hatanya minayim liyotze shim Allah lo yered." But one second, also going back to what we said before, how do we know that halacha l'maisa, if something left the confines of the Beis Hamikdash and then came back in and was put on the mizbeach, that we don't take it back down again? To which the Gemara says, "Minayin liyosei shim." I'm sorry, let me read that again. "Minayin liyosei shim Allah lo yered." So we'll say, how do we know that if something left, yotze means it left the confines of the Beis Hamikdash, therefore should not be offered, but it came back in, and indeed you put it on the mizbeach, that you don't have to take it back down again? To which the Gemara says, "Shar yotze b'kasher b'bama." We learn it out of from the fact by bama. The halacha is by bama, even if something was yotze, went out of the confines, even though bama doesn't really have physical confines, nevertheless, if it shouldn't have gone up, we let it stay on there. So the Gemara says, no. Tana azos Torah sa'ola riba samachlei. We'll say that's a different drasha, because that drasha ultimately, again, was learned from what? That drasha was learned from the pasuk of Zos Torah sa'ola. So we'll say, let's just close out this particular sugya. So again, the halacha Rabbi say over here is as follows. So just so we close out this Mishnah before we begin the next. So this is the Rambam in Hilchos Psuli HaMokdashin, and just to close out from the Mishnah. So the way the Rambam paskined was as follows: Perek Zayin, halacha Aleph and halacha Ches. Let me just read to you these two halachos, and then we're going to Emir Hashem move on. So we'll listen to this. Kol ha'psulim la'avodah shemalkum u'likasam psulam. We'll say the halacha is, in general, anyone who is pasul for avodah, if he did malika, the malika is pasul. V'afa pisha also of pasul, but we'll say even though again the bird itself is pasul, eina kinevelas ha'of tar l'tuma. So we'll say even though the malika is sacrificially invalid, nevertheless what? The bird is not an avela. What does it mean if the bird is not an avela? Therefore what? It doesn't convey tumah. Therefore, v'chein malak balayla osha shachat chulin b'fnim v'kachim b'chutz einam kinevela. So we'll say the halacha ultimately is that if you did these type of items which are essentially an invalid malika, although it is sacrificially invalid, the halacha is that it does not become an avela. Now there are exceptions to this rule. Malak torim shloigiyaz manon. We'll say if let's say you did malika on turtle doves that were not the right age, or b'nei yona sha'avers manon, or on pigeons, right? Or doves, I should say, that got too old, they aged out, or b'shibesh gapa, or it had a dried out, withered wing, or it was blinded in one eye, missing a leg. So if you did malika in these animals, then what? Then the halacha is it is an avela. We'll say here's the part that I want you to remember. Ze'aklal. Here is the principle. I'm reading the Rambam now. Kol shi psula b'kodesh, psula ve'inon avela. Lo haya psula b'kodesh, harezun avela chodar. We'll say, see, here we go. What we learn from this Rambam is a very important principle. Saying, whenever ultimately again the karban ha'of is invalid because of some detail regarding the malika itself. In other words, the animal is totally fine. I just messed up the malika. Then Rabbi say, even though it is sacrificially invalid, the malika acts as a proper act of slaughter, and therefore again the bird will not be an avela. However, where the problem is not with the malika, but the Rabbi say is with what? Is with the animal itself. The animal itself is compromised. Then what? The malika is not only sacrificially invalid, but the malika is totally invalid, and the bird has the status of an avela. So, for example, Rabbi say, if I go ahead and I do malika with my left hand, or I and non-kohen do malika, but the bird is totally fine, the malika is invalid. The karban is invalid, but the karban is considered to be what? Or I should say, the bird is considered to be what? geshacht, right, is considered to be shechted, and therefore again it's not nevela. As opposed to if I take a bird with one leg and I'm a Kohen, I do malika on it, but we'll say then the issue is not a deficiency in the malika, the issue is deficiency in the bird. And obviously it is sacrificially invalid because the animal from the beginning was sacrificially invalid, and not only that, but the bird is considered to be in nevela, and therefore again conveys tumah. Good. But we'll say that's the piece of halacha l'maisa you'll take from this sugya. Weiter, Mishnah. A lot to do. Mishnah on bottom of Samech Tesel and Aleph. That's why I didn't know. Malak, b'nim tzei streifa. Well, so what happens in the following case? I do malika, and it turns out that the animal is a treifa. So we'll say, so I do malika on the bird, we open up the bird, and we find that the bird has a punctured lung, or one of the other simanim that makes the animal a treifa. So we'll say, so now the shaila is, so obviously, for sacrificial purposes, so the bird is invalid. What about for tumah purposes? Rabbi Meir says, Rabbi Meir says, the bird does not convey tumah. The bird is not an avela. Amud Beis, Rabbi Huda Omer Metame. Rabbi Huda says, no, it does convey tumah. Rabbi Meir, Kal V'chomer. Rabbi Meir says, I'm going to tell you why I hold that it does not convey tumah. Kal V'chomer. It's a Kal V'chomer. What's the Kal V'chomer? Im the velas behema shem tame b'mago b'masa shchitasa kshera. So Rabbi Meir says like this. We'll say when it comes to an avelas behema, we'll say what's an avelas behema? Exactly as it says, an animal, right? An animal that dies. Shem tame b'mago ub'masa. We'll say with nevelas behema, the interesting part is the halacha is it conveys tumah just through contact. If you touch the animal, then by definition it becomes you become tummy after the animal is dead. And yet, what do we see? Shchitasa mitahares. So also, nevertheless, the shchita of the animal causes it to be tar. Trefasa mitum asa. I'm sorry, I just read that wrong. I'm sorry, let me read that again. So, im nevelas behemat shemetama b'maga ub'masa shchitasa mitahares trefasa mitum asa. So we'll say ultimately again. So if you have an nevelas behema, which conveys tumah through maga and masa, you have to both say, what's the halacha? The halacha is, if you have an animal that is a treifa, which you both say is any animal which what? Any animal which has some type of condition which is going to cause its imminent demise, however you define imminent. And yet if you go ahead and you shecht that treifa, then I both say, what is the halacha? The halacha is the shechting of that treifa takes away any potential tumas nevela. Then if that's the case, nevela sa'of, she'ino metame b'mago b'masa. Then also when it comes to nevela sa'of, which does not convey tumah through maga and masa, through ultimately again touching and carrying, eino din shetei shchitasa mitahares trefasa mitumasa. Then certainly again shchita should be enough to remove it from the category of nevela, which would then prevent it from going ahead and conveying tumah. So we'll say, so you hear Rabbi Meir's Kal V'chomer. It's a good one. Rabbi Meir says that if an animal, which conveys tumah by maga and masa, which seems to tell me that what? That the tumah of an animal is more chomer, yet what? If you shecht the animal, and it turns out to be a treifa, that shchita is enough to remove any possibility of nevela tumah. So certainly by a bird, which does not convey tumah through maga and masa, but instead only conveys tumah ultimately what? Abeis habliya, through ingestion, if you go ahead and you shecht it, even if it turns out to be a treifa, it certainly should remove any kind of tumas nevela. To which the Gemara says, Mamatzinu b'shchitasu shimachsharta la'achila u'mitaheres treifasa mitumasa af malikaso. So also the Gemara says, therefore we're going to compare shchita to malika, just like by shchita, which under normal circumstances permits consumption, but at the same time we'll go ahead and take away tumah in a case of treifa. Af malikaso shimachsharta ba'achila. So to bosai malika, which in general allows a kohen to go ahead and consume the meat of the bird. Shimachsharta ba'achila. So to Gemara says, just like achila goes ahead and permits consumption, and yet achila and shchita on a treifa will go ahead and prevent it from conveying tumas navela through mago masa. So to malika, which permits consumption, should also be enough to remove any possibility of tuma when it turns out that the animal was indeed a treifa. Rabbi Yossi Omer daya kinevelas behema. So the Gemara says, ultimately Rabbi Yossi says we're going to limit the comparison that a bird should be like an Neveas B'Yamim. In what sense? Shchitasa matarasa v'lo milikasa. So Rabbi Yossi says, no, Rabbi Yossi says, I'm sorry, that's a jump. It's a jump to automatically assume that you could equate malika ultimately with shchita. Therefore Rabbi Yossi says, the halacha that shchita has the ability to be metaher a treifa. Well, so when you say metaher treifa, what that means is that if you ended up shechting an animal which is a treifa, that halacha l'maisa, again, the shchita is enough to remove any status of nevela from the animal and it won't convey tumah. Rabbi Yossi says that is a din that is limited to animals, does not apply to birds. So both say ultimately we end up with a fundamental machlokes Rabbi Huda and Rabbi Meir regarding what happens if you do malika on a bird and it turns out that the bird is a treifa. So already I know that what? Because it's a treifa, both say, what does that tell me? It is sacrificially invalid. That I know. What's my shaila? Does it convey tumah or not? Does the malika, which Rabbi say, and again I want to point out, this is a case of proper malika, right? There's no psulim. The case over here is a regular kohen, proper malika. The shaila is, what does its new status of treifa, or its newly found status of treifa, convey tumah or not? Rabbi Meir says it is not metame, right? Rabbi Yehuda says it is metame. Rabbi Meir bases his shita ultimately on what? On the kal v'chomer. Now, interestingly enough, the Mishnah does not go ahead and really explain Rabbi Yehuda's shita. We'll see in the Gemara. So we'll say, let's go. So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Meir. So I want to just point out. So Rabbi Meir, so the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir lo darish dayo. Does Rabbi Meir not darshan? Does Rabbi Meir not accept the premise of dayo? They will say, now ultimately again, what the Gemara is pointing out is as follows: Rabbi Meir made a kal v'chomer, and the kal v'chomer ultimately is that if shchita of a behema is enough to go ahead, so I should say differently, that if behema, which is metame b'mago b'masa, ultimately again it's shchita, even of a treifa, is enough to go ahead and remove its tumah status. So certainly bird, which is not metame b'mago b'masa, but only a beis habliyah, so shchita of a treifa should be enough to go ahead and remove its status from being an avela. Comes along Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi says essentially the concept of dayo lavo min adin lios kenidon. We'll say the concept of dayo means that halacha lemaisa, sometimes in making a kal v'chomer, the derivative item can be no stronger than the source item itself. Now, when Rabbi Yossi says that, Rabbi Yossi understands that to mean that really you can't learn out oath from behema. Now, if you look at the last Rashi in the Mishnah for just a moment, Rashi says, Daya kinevelas behema, the hoil v'lo yolif oath ela mi behema l'tayr treifa mitumasa, Dayo lava min hadin lihios kinido. They will say at the end of the day, since we're learning out oath from behema for the purpose of being metayr treifa, so ultimately again oath could be no stronger than behema. They both say now by behema there is a din of shchita and not a din of malika. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi's logical conclusion is you can't learn out oath from behema because oath is too dissimilar to behema. There's dafka a din of shchita and not a din of malika. So we'll say, now the Gemara asks, so does Rabbi Meir not subscribe to this concept of dayo? In other words, we'll say it would appear that if you subscribe to the concept of dayo, we'll say in dayo meaning that what? That if you learn a kal v'chomer, the derived item can be no stronger than the source item, it would appear that the logical conclusion you would reach is that, not like Rabbi Meir, namely again that halacha l'maisa, it could very well be that if you do malika on a bird, which is a treifa, that is just living matame. So does Rabbi Meir now subscribe to the idea of dayo? Dayo dorais. We'll say the concept of dayo, in fact, is biblical. We'll say this is amazing. Where do we learn this out? From the Sanya, midin kal v'chomer ketzad. Rabbi say where biblically do we see the concept of a kal v'chomer? Vayomer Hashem Moshe v'avya yarok yirak b'faneha. Rabbi say listen to this. By the episode with Miriam, when Miriam inadvertently spoke negatively about Moshe Rabbeinu, so what happens? So Moshe Rabbeinu davens, Moshe Rabbeinu davens, and Chadash Baruch Hu responds, listen, if her father were to spit in her face, haloti kalim shivas yamim, tisager shivas yamim. So Chadash Baruch Hu says, listen, to not punish Miriam at all is not right. If her father were to spit in her face, would she not be embarrassed ultimately again and seclude herself for 7 days? So we'll say, so we'll say, if for her father, she would go ahead and seclude herself for people for 7 days. Then when the Shechina is angry at her, then what? She should go ahead and be distanced and cut off from the camp for how long? 14 days. Yet what? So we'll say, that's the concept of Kal V'chomer. Ela dayo lava min adin lios kenidon. I will say, but we learn at the concept of dayo that the derivative item can be no stronger than the source item. The derivative item over here is Hakadosh Baruch Hu's displeasure with Miriam. The source item is her father's displeasure with her, and therefore the Kal V'chomer says if her father were getting with her for 7 days, Hakadosh Baruch Hu should get with her for 14 days. But dayo says that what the derivative can't be any stronger than the source, and therefore Miriam is in seclusion for 7 days. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Abin. Rabbi Meir kra ashkach v'darish. In reality, Rabbi Meir found the pasuk and he dashed in the pasuk. What's the pasuk? Rabbi say, get ready for this. Zos toras habehema v'ha'of. So I'll say, so the pasuk says, these are the laws. This is the Torah of the behema and the oaf. So the Gemara says, v'chi be'ezeh Torah shafsa behema la'of. Both of the behema. Now, in what way is an oaf, a bird, comparable to a behema? And v'chi be'ezeh Torah shafsa behema la'of v'of la'behema. In what way is an oaf comparable to a behema and a behema to an oaf? So watch this. Behema metame b'mago b'masa. Oaf in metame b'mago b'masa. So I'll say, I'm not exactly clear how they're similar. On one hand, a behema conveys tumah, I'll say, through maga, contact, masa, carrying. A bird does not go ahead and convey tumah through maga and masa, rather only through ingestion. Oaf metame b'gadam b'esabliya. Behema ein metame b'gadam b'esabliya. We'll say oaf is unique in that what? When you go ahead, if you ingest a nevela sa'of, then what? It conveys tumah to your person and to your clothing. Yet, interestingly enough, if you touch a nevelas behema, rabosai, or if you carry nevelas, what does it convey tumah to? To your body, to your person, but not to your clothing. So, in which way is oaf and behema comparable? Elomar lecha ma behema davar shemachshira la'achila. Mitar trefasa mitumasa. Right, I will say what it's to teach me is as follows. Just like by behema, the very action which normally allows for consumption, i.e. shchita, is the action which prevents tumas nevela from devolving upon an animal, even if the animal was a trefa. Af oaf davar shemach sheba'achila mitar trefasa mitumasa. So to by oaf, the very action which normally permits it for consumption, which we'll say by an oaf is what? By an oaf will be malika, mitayr trefasa mitumaso. That same malika, if done on the bird, even if the bird itself is a trefa, nevertheless will prevent the animal, the bird carcass, from becoming tamei with tumas navela. So we'll say, so that's Rabbi Meir's drasha. Rabbi Meir sees in the passage that the Torah is somehow linking lest you behema with oath. I'm not sure exactly what the comparison is. The only possible comparison I will say is in this particular case. Just like by behema, shchita, which ultimately again is the permitter for consumption, ultimately again prevents the animal from contracting tumas navela, even if the animal is a treifa. So too by oath, malika, which normally permits consumption, will also go ahead and prevent the animal from contracting tumas navela, even if the animal was already a treifa. Rabbi Huda will say, what's Rabbi Huda's logic? Rabbi Huda says that if you shecht an oaf, if you do malika on an oaf, which is a treifa, you find it to be a treifa, the bird is metame tumas navela. So what's his drasha? Kra ashkach v'darash. He finds a pasuk and he darshans it as well. What's his pasuk? Rabbi saying nevelu treifa. The pasuk says the pasuk links together nevela and treifa. V'chol nefesh asher tochal nevela utreifa. So what's the pshat? Amar Rabbi Yehuda treifa lama nemra. So we'll say, why does the pasuk have to say treifa? Im treifa chaya. So we'll say, if it's a treifa that's alive and then dies as a result of its treifa status, then hari nevela amura. Then we'll say that's a nevela. Im treifa ina chaya. And if you say that a treifa doesn't live, and meaning it's dead already, hari bichlal nevela. So we'll say, so what the Gemara is pointing out something very interesting is that halacha l'maisa again. What type of treifa are we talking about? The pashtus will say the only time you're eating the animal is when it's dead. If it's dead already, then what? Then by definition, it's a treifa. Look at Rashi just a moment. Rashi says, "Im treifa chaya, plug tehi be'elu treifos, ikol mandar treifa chaya, vikol mandar ina chaya, im treifa chaya ba'at shemesa, haisa becheskas chaya, hari nevela amur." Rashi says, "B'pasek kevan shemesa misnabeles b'misasa, v'im treifa ina chashuv chaya, hari mishash nitshava b'chlal nevela." So we'll say, if you hold that a treifa is considered to be alive, it's an avela. If you hold the treifa is dead, then it's an avela. In other words, we'll say at any point in time when you're consuming this animal, by definition, it's already an avela. To which the Gemara says, "El lahavi treifa sheshachta shemitama." Rather, we'll say, why does the pasuk add in the word treifa? That word treifa is coming to include, I will say, which case? A treifa that was shechted. that even if it was shechted while it was a treifa, so it didn't die of its treifa status, it was shechted while it was a treifa, nevertheless, we'll say the halach is that what? That it goes there and conveys tumah. So we'll say this is Rabbi Yehuda's shita, that if you shecht an animal, or you shecht a bird, and you find it to be a treifa, the halacha is it conveys tumah. Amli Rav Shizvi, Elame'ata, Dichsiv, V'chelev nevela, V'chelev treifa. So I'll say, but one second, when the pasuk says, talks about the chelev and nevela, chelev of a treifa, Hasam nami nema, let's see over there as well. Im treifa chaya hare nevela amura. So I'll say, if the treifa is considered to be alive, then the ma'ase again it's alive until it dies, and it's nevela. Im treifa ina chaya, and if you hold that a treifa is not able to live, hare hi bechlan nevela. Ultimately, again, it also has the status of a nevela. El lahavi treifa sheshachta shechal batar. So what I could say from there is what it must be coming to include a case. What case of chelev are we talking about? A case where ultimately, again, that if you took an animal that is treifa and you shechted it, that its chelev should be tar. Michlal dichitmea, which also would seem to indicate to me that what? The animal itself is going to be tameh, even though the chelev itself is going to be tar. That's not necessarily true. So we'll say yet again, what we'll have to do, I'm going too fast now. We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick it up once again. So we're ending off, just to understand, we're ending up mid-machlokes. Mid-machlokes, ultimately, again, machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, specifically about the case of a shechita of an animal that turns out to be a treifa. What, or I should say the malika of a bird that turns out to be a treifa. Rabbi Meir says it does not convey tumah. The malika status removes the nevela status. Seemingly, Rabbi Meir's drasha is that he's learning out from the pasuk, which compares what? Which compares behema to an oath, just like behema is no longer a treifa after it experiences shechita, so to the oath one says malika is no longer considered to be a treifa, versus Rabbi Yehuda says it is metame, and again, Rabbi Yehuda